Good morning, everybody. Welcome to ProfessionalQuest Business for a Better World. My name is Carrie Willigan. I'm the Assistant Dean for Career Services in the Business School, and we are thrilled to have you all here today. We have a wonderful panel, and they're going to be discussing different career options within the Business for a Better World space. Professor Lisa Green-Pemble is going to moderate our panel this morning. Students, if you have any questions for the panel, please send them to me or Caleb Lewis in the chat, and we'll make sure to get them to Lisa, who will ask the panelists. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lisa. And again, thank you very much. And thank you to our panel. Lisa?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a rock star panel, and I think it's significant that all three of our guests are Mason graduates. And so I always think that's really exciting to see what people at George Mason University School of Business go on to do. And so it's super nice to have you all back here virtually, at least. I have a number of questions, but students, please put questions in the chat because these panels are really for you. So we really just want to hear from you and to hear what's important to you. And so please ask those questions. So I am part of a center, the Business for a Better World Center. And I'm just wondering if we can just start off, when you hear that phrase, business for a better world, does that resonate? Like, what do you think of when you hear that? And you can go in any order.
Okay, Sri, you got it.
So when I think of business for a better world, I think about solutions, whether it's access to better healthcare or education or products. So I think about solutions to some of the world's problems using business techniques and a certain level of profitability as well as social and environmental impact.
Excellent. And now that I did this, I realized that I didn't allow you to introduce yourselves because I just made this assumption. So as you answer, will you please tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and why you wanted to be present at this panel this morning?
Yes, so I'm Shri, and I am a graduate of the MBA program at the School of Business. I also have my JD, and my background is international human rights law as well as business law. So I started off in the law, and then I transitioned into the space called social enterprise, which is now the impact business space. And for the past several years, I've been working in sustainability and ESG. I'm an advisor for the Albrecht Stonebridge Group out of DC, and we advise Fortune 500 companies on their ESG strategies. I'm a firm believer in triple bottom line impact, so I love being here and I love talking about it. So if there's any questions I can answer, happy to help and happy to guide you on your career prospects.
Fantastic. And Kate, I saw your mic come off. So tell us who you are, what brings you here today, like why this is a topic that's important to you, and what Business for a Better World means to you.
Okay, so it's nice to be here. My name's Kate Vigiano-Janich, and I'm the co-founder of Rowan Tree. We are a co-working and co-growth space located in Herndon, Virginia, geared for women, but open to all people who own their own businesses or they work remotely. And instead of working, at home all the time or in a WeWork, they come here and they don't only get a desk space, but they get a community of other people who are also trying to build something or create something or work and grow. So we support your business, but also you as a whole person. So that's my business. But what I really was excited about this and looking through some of the questions is the idea that there's no one path. There's just no one path. And I always thought I'd be changing the world. And I ended up working for Booz Allen as a consultant, but always felt like I wanted to be doing something more, something different. And it's just, our journeys are all different. And it's interesting to hear where everybody else is coming from, because you'll see, Shri, her path is, look at that combination of experience. So I'm really excited to be here because I feel like I'm finally making some type of impact, even though I think I always was and didn't know it. So I'm happy to share my experience. And I think the idea of the business for a better world, Shri said it better than I ever could have, but I think the idea is that it's a business with a heart, and that your heart can be for all different sorts of work. But I think the idea is that you're making the world a little bit better around you using, like Shri said, the tools and techniques that you can use in business, that you're not only making better world, but you are also making a living and making a profit, which is great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I feel like that should be like on a t-shirt or something, business with a heart, right? I just think that that's great. Laura, what about you?
Thank you, Lisa. And I really appreciate being invited. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you were cutting in and out just a little bit.
Okay. So I am a Mason grad, have my accounting degree from Mason, and lived in the Virginia area most of my life. Now I'm out in Albuquerque. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the American Society of Radiologic Technology. So we represent imaging professionals, radiation therapists across the world. So they are helping us stay healthy. I'm a firm believer in business for a better world. I love what Kate and Tracy's business with heart. And when I think of business for a better world, I think of a lot of collaboration. I don't think of it as limited to the business that I work in. That businesses are really going to be working together, people working together to make the world a better place.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much. So, actually, Sri, I'm going to come back to something that you said kind of early on. I think in a lot of the classes that we teach, we talk about corporate social responsibility, we talk about ESG, we talk about social enterprise, we talk about sustainability. I'm wondering if you can shed some light on some of the terms that you think we ought to be using in this space and where you think we're headed moving forward. And then, Laura, Kate, if you want to chime in, let's do it.
That's a great question, Lisa. It is kind of confusing, especially when you're starting to come into this space. It's definitely transitioned over the decades, and I can say I've been it for decades. Originally, we have corporate social responsibility, which is keeping companies accountable to pretty much a minimum degree or a substantial degree within a community. And but it doesn't really keep them accountable towards their entire value and supply chain. And I think that's the transition we're seeing from CSR to ESG. So what does that mean? If a corporation is doing work, let's say in Africa, say for an oil and gas, what are they doing within the community that's not disrupting the community? Typically, they're partnering with foundations to provide certain kinds of access to things. But now what we're seeing, particularly when the Biden administration put out new policies about environmental, social, and governance, which is ESG, we're seeing a transition from CSR to now holding companies accountable to look at their entire value chain and the entire supply chain and see how we're affecting things along the way. In between that, there's another terminology called social entrepreneurship, social impact, impact investing. I'd like to think that that space had built up in the past 12 to 15 years, and it kind of opened up the door now for other stakeholders to come in, like corporates, to be part of this new ecosystem. So there's a lot of terminology out there. I think where the space is going is right now sustainability, but also trying to bring in the different players from these different sectors, impact investors, foundations, social entrepreneurs, and really building that ecosystem for change, because we have a lot of problems to solve and not one person or one organization can do it. So I think we're hopefully going towards more collaboration across all sectors.
Fantastic. Laura, Kate, do you want to jump in? You don't have to.
Well, one of the things I think is really exciting is the fact that social, and I'm already learning from Shri. I love, just tell me more. But what I really love is that first of all, it's strange to say this phrase because I don't feel like I'm an older generation, but I am. And the next generation is coming in, and there is an expectation that where you work will take a social stand. And I've actually gotten my hand slapped for having a big mouth and talking a little bit too much. And so I find it so heartening and exciting that no matter what you call it or what spin each organization may take, it's becoming a requirement for a lot of young employees that where they work takes a stand on something important to them. And the fact that in the midst of that and flexibility is sometimes more important than salary. And just knowing those are the people coming up in the next round of leaders is so exciting to me. And I want to work for them. I'm really excited about it.
I think that's awesome. And I'm going to ask a slightly different question, Laura, and invite you to jump in on this one and and kind of the next one. So I'm in thinking about that question too. And going back to something that Kate said about there's not a typical career path to get to this space. And so, Laura, I invite you to talk about any of the things related to terminology, but also to think about your personal journey. How did you get how did you get there, right, from where you were?
I think that there's not a path. I do think it's important to align your personal values with corporations' values, which I think is what Kate and Sean are also referring to. So you have your personal mission aligned with that professional mission, because you're not going to be happy in your career if you're not following your heart as well as your head. So I think I had kind of a traditional path. After getting my accounting degree, I did public accounting, and then from there went to corporate accounting after I passed my CPA exam. Thank you, GMU, for my good foundation. And then had the good fortune to work in healthcare. I've always had jobs where I felt like I was able to help my company make a difference. So I don't think there's any one path, but I do think your path needs to follow your values. As Kate was saying, we're seeing that rise in importance, that if companies don't have good values, they're not going to be able to attract good employees.
Fabulous. Kate, do you want to jump in and share a little bit about your journey, which I know is different from Laura's?
Oh, it's so all over. When I graduated college, I ended up working at a nonprofit called the Hospice Foundation of America, which is it's an end of life organization, and I loved it because I felt like it mattered. You're helping people who are dying and helping their families and help them find information, get education, and support. But I always thought I was supposed to be doing something bigger, which I'm learning now. Every small things go a long way, just trying to be a good person around you. But what happened was I hit my growth wall because we were a small nonprofit. There were only about 6 of us there. And I ended up, because at the time I was the most tech savvy of the company, ended up doing a lot of their online work and communications. So I ended up working at Booz Allen on their strategic communications team, because I went to some workshop and they looked at my resume and they had a speaker who was a consultant. And I didn't even know what a consultant was until I was like 26 years old. And so I was at Booz Allen for about 6 years, and then went to a couple smaller consulting firms after that, and ended up working in healthcare. And I went to George Mason for my master's in healthcare systems management, because I do care about healthcare and protecting our vulnerable. And so even though I didn't end up technically going into healthcare field, I've worked a lot with the VA and their healthcare system on the back end, and a lot of kind of helping them communicate better, more to veterans. So that felt good, but it still wasn't my own. And being not stuck, but working for companies when you can say what you want until you get to a point, and then but it's not your company to drive. So my best friend and I actually came up with an idea around creating a space for women who, where they could get support and friendship and camaraderie and professional development. So we ended up creating this space, and it's been amazing because apparently, as we now know, there are a lot of women and men who really care about the world around us. We want to do something that we care about. Sometimes we don't know how to do it. So we're all kind of muddling through together. And also we've been able to through this, now we have more visibility. We actually have a platform to stand on. So with, for example, the Black Lives Matter, everything that happened with George Floyd, we were able to take a stand and send our statement to 1,000 people and really do some work on our end to be better and to kind of practice what we preach. So it's been an interesting journey because everything I'm doing now is because I've learned all these things along the way, but now it's kind of making it my own, which feels so good and exciting. Do I still work on the side and consult to make money? Yes, I do. It's not, it's not all polished and pretty on the outside, like it looks like on the outside, but it means a lot. And it's kind of the culmination of everything that I've worked for the past 20 plus years.
Love it. And now I will turn it over to Sri because you have yet a completely different career trajectory.
Yes, similar to Kate, it's not a very straight or traditional route. Sometimes I still feel like I'm on this winding road of trying to figure it out. Maybe I will to the end of my life, who knows? But one thing that's been consistent is my connection to wanting to create change. And that started at a very young age when I was in college. And I was an English lit major. I loved to write, didn't know what to do with that, come from a family of physicians. So I was not going to be a doctor. I ended up going to law school, and my ideal was to work for the United Nations. I wanted to save the world. Law school beat that out of me my first year. I came to reality by my third year, but had some amazing opportunities. I lived abroad. And so to me, my experience has been more about living out of the country and really having tangible experiences on the ground because I'm an experiential learner. So after law school, I actually worked as an in-house legal counsel on work we were doing in Iraq and Afghanistan. But I felt like I really couldn't create change unless I was on the ground. So after that, I quit my job, and I will never forget how I learned about social enterprise. I was kind of lost trying to figure it out. And I read an article in The Economist, and they wrote this article about social enterprise, and I'd never heard of it. I did a Google search. There was no hits on Google. And I kept searching and searching, and I came across an organization. I reached out to them and I said, I want to know more about this. Are you hiring? It ended up being a billionaire investor from Silicon Valley that he and his investor friends were setting up the social enterprise impact investing space. They're a part of the TED Talk group. They're part of the Acumen Fund. Had no idea. It was very serendipitous. I was sent to India. I set up the organization there. I worked with over 50 social entrepreneurs. I built up the space. And then my passion was always to go to Africa. So after that, I went to Africa. I lived in Kenya and Rwanda, and I built up stuff there in programs. I set up a college fellowship for people. So I've been an entrepreneur at heart, but I've used my law background to do my analytical skills. And in this process of my impact investing, I wanted to hone my business skills. And that's when I came back to my MBA. So to me, my passion has always been there, but how I was going to live my passion is always kind of a mystery. And I think that's the fun part of the ride, because you're constantly looking for, well, where can I create that impact? How can I create that change? And that's the fun part for me. Sometimes it can create instability financially, but eventually you get to the point where you say, well, okay, I'm the expert in this, and I've learned all this experience, and that's kind of where I am right now in my career. So it's been a really fun ride, and it's been really great to be able to travel and be on the ground and working with different kinds of people.
I think what you're saying is just fantastic. I'm thinking of, some of our students are at the point where they're looking for jobs, and I think there's this pressure to know, like, where am I going to go next, and what is my career going to look like? And then there are other students who are like, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I know what my degree is. And I think that this diversity that we have on this panel is such a great affirmation of different ways to get to the same place, right? To finding that professional joy in whatever it is that you choose to do. So I love that. I want to go back to something that Laura said earlier, which I think is really important, and that idea of aligning your personal values with wherever you work. So aligning your personal values with corporate values and making sure that those are in sync, and that leads to greater fulfillment than if you find yourself with a set of personal values that you can't live out in your professional life. And so since we do have quite a few students in the audiences, audience today, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about any of the classes or the experiences that you think that they should be seeking out to prepare themselves for, if they're interested in the business for good space. What should they be looking for? Who wants to go first? Sri, you're up.
I'll go ahead and take it first. I was an English lit major, as I said, so I had more of a liberal arts background and more creative. But obviously, when we're talking about business, I think there should be a fundamental of business understanding on some level. To me, it's been really important to know about finance. With that said, when we talk about business for a better world, at the end of the day, we're also talking about human beings and behavioral change. And change, in my opinion, and changing from what I've seen, happens in a generation. We're seeing it now with this generation of individuals, like we said, that are really passionate and really involved with sustainability and social impact. So I would encourage people to even take classes on behavioral organizations, behavioral change, anthropology, just so that we get the human element alongside the business side of it as well.
Fantastic. Kate, you're nodding your head. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I had reviewed the questions and I wrote that down. Very similar as I think, and I had put psychology and sociology. It's just kind of understanding why people behave the way they do, and motivation. I remember actually one of my favorite classes was with, oh my gosh, I hope I'm not messing up his name, Dr. Perlman. I might be killing it, but at GMU, and I remember it was a leadership and management class. But what I loved about it is they actually wove in a lot around behaviors and motivation. And so understanding that we're all motivated by different things. Like some people are motivated, like, so me, you pat me on the back. I'll work so hard. If you just say that what I did, I'm like a golden retriever. If you just say, I'm doing a good job and like I'm helping, I will keep chugging along. And then other people don't really care about the affirmation. They want a good salary, or they want trust or flexibility. So understanding that we all work differently. Not one is not better than the other, but we're understanding how to kind of just support each other in our work and understand why people do what they do and what might help move people along. That was one of the most useful pieces that I've ever learned. So I'm with Sri. I think management, but with the twist of understanding how humans work.
Laura, what would you like to add to this?
Well, I totally agree. I think a mix of hard and soft skills is essential. You just have to have them both now. So diversity in your classes, I'm not familiar with specific classes that are offered, but also taking classes from the best professors, so that you can expose yourself, knowledge that you don't have, and also be in classes with students who can offer you more knowledge and learning. But the people side is really important, especially I focused, like my numbers, my accounting classes, all of that. But as you work, you realize, oh, I really need to know more to help motivate my teams, how to be a leader, that kind of thing. So I think a diversity of classes, great professors is what I'd say.
Love it. And I think some of the other things, I just want to put a plug in, because I think the diversity, the people, we have students here who've been taking our professional skills courses, which do get into some of the soft skills of business. And I think those are the ones that you're talking about in terms of interpersonal relationships and teamwork and, the dreaded group project, except that you always are in a group at work, always working with people. And I think those are really important. The business school is launching, and Sri knows all about this because she was on the team that helped work with this, is to create a business for a better world minor. So no matter what your major is, this minor encourages you to take classes in psychology and anthropology, sustainability, the environmental type of sustainability, but to really fill out your educational portfolio. So I love that. What in terms of internships? Like I often have students ask about internships, credentialing, certificates. Do you have any advice around those sorts of things for students?
Well, first, I want to add one more thing from the last thought, and then I'll talk to this one.
Yeah, please.
One thing I didn't know how to do for is everyone talks about networking. And the problem with networking is people go into it thinking that you're supposed to ask for stuff, or I don't know, but you don't know what networking is. Like, what does it mean? How do you network? And I'm learning, one of the things I think would be so helpful is to help teach people how to ask really good questions and listen and connect with people in a way who are in the area that you're interested in, and to have really like come up with some really thoughtful questions that aren't about you getting something out of it besides learning, because it's about the building the connection, and things don't happen right away, and understanding a lot of things take a while. You plant a seed and it takes a long time to grow. I think that's something that, first of all, I want to take your minor, and I feel like that would be a wonderful class in there, is how to listen and make connections in a meaningful way that's fruitful. And so you're not going in just to get, but you're also going in to give. So, and with that being said, internships, I think, is a similar thing. I wish I had done more internships. And I think looking at areas that really interest you and trying to talk to those leaders and ask questions, of go on LinkedIn. We have LinkedIn now. We never had that before. Start with informational interviews. You might not get an internship because things are so hard and competitive, but even if you should go ahead and apply, but ask for an informational interview for anything that you're interested in. You never know what's going to come out of it, but even you'll at least walk out of it with more knowledge and awareness, and maybe you're in the back of their mind. Yeah, I wish I had done that. I wish I had done 10 internships, more about, because I would have known more what's out there and that exists, because you just don't know what exists.
That is great advice about just having informational interviews, because people love to talk about themselves. They
Sure
love to
do.
talk about what
Clearly.
they're passionate about. Yeah, right. And so the opportunity to connect with people without, do you have an internship for me? Right. Because that's not really what you're doing, but I'm just curious to know what this space is like. And it's an opportunity to kind of try out things. I mean, you might think you want to go into entrepreneurship. You might think you want to go into accounting or human resource management. And then you get into an internship and you're like, oh, this is not what I thought. Well, what a wonderful time to learn that, right? When you're in college, like that's a great time to learn those things. I think that is really excellent advice. Super, super, super. And students, you can practice what Kate just said about asking really insightful questions by sending in some insightful questions that you would like to ask of the panelists who are here. Laura and Sri, what else would you like to add to this?
First of all, I agree with everything Kate said. I think asking about things you're genuinely interested in is really important. So I like to read. Lots of times in the interview, I will ask about books that the interviewer would recommend, something like real way of thinking. I think internships are great, that it is how you learn what you might like, what you don't. I was a co-op student. So 6 months I worked, 6 months I went to school, two rounds. And I learned I didn't want to work in the government. So it was a good experience, but the energy didn't really match, wasn't a good match. And the values of the leaders there weren't a great match for me. So I went on a different path. Didn't have to study abroad, but I think that would be an awesome opportunity to learn more about our world and just broaden your horizons.
That's awesome. I like that. Study abroad. And why do you think say a little bit more about why study abroad is so important?
Well, I didn't do it, but I just think that understanding more about the world, that I have traveled abroad after college, and there was kind of like, oh my gosh, our country is so young. I didn't realize that until I went to. So I think it really gives you, more perspective and increases understanding of diversity and just the world in general, which is, always.
Yeah, I like that. And just so for again for all the students who are on here, there are so many opportunities to do study abroad. A lot of the courses that are offered in the School of Business have, over spring break components, our MBA, just new courses coming out. And as we emerge, I shouldn't say emerge from COVID, but I guess we adapt to COVID and sort of move into what's next, it looks like things are opening up a little bit more. And so if you have the time, that's great advice. Sri.
I'm also going to pivot off of what Kate said about networking, because I am just a serial network. Since my first job out of college, every single job I've had has just purely been networking. And I understand that networking has changed quite a bit for this generation. And also after COVID, so you may not have the ability to be out there as much as we have in the past. So I think utilizing LinkedIn is a really good thing. For example, if I'm building a team right now for sustainability, I would want an intern on my team. And so I have people who are contacting me on LinkedIn, and that's in the back of my mind because this person took an initiative. I think that stems from a curiosity. And it stems from wanting to really make that connection. So I would encourage people to try to find ways to network, even if it's showing up to events like this and asking questions, because it stands out in the mind of the people who are hiring. In terms of internships, I believe as much experience you can get without pressure is the best way to go, because it allows you to discover who you are. And so I personally have worked from NGOs in college to then social enterprises. Something else you could consider between your junior and senior year, and even after your senior year, is fellowship programs. Now the social impact space is building up quite a bit. And there's fellowship programs where you can have an immersive experience in another country, working with the social enterprise or working in a village. And that allows you, again, to connect more with humanity and the surroundings. So you can figure out what are the problems and what are the solutions, not from a theoretical perspective, but from an experiential perspective. And that's essentially what we're talking about when we're talking about social impact and sustainability and business for a better world.
This is great. This is really great advice. I'm glad we're recording this because I've asked that question before, and I have to say this is especially strong advice. And I really like the emphasis on networking for those of you who are in Business 303 and looking at networking. I mean, networking is really hard. And I think one of Kate's comments earlier, you really have to be present, right? And listen to the other person and not have your eye on who might else have walked into the room, but really stay focused and in the moment. And look at everything that you can get from a conversation that might be unexpected, right? And so I think this is incredible advice. I'd love to have you talk for a moment about what you find most rewarding about the work that you do.
I can go ahead and start. Sorry, Kate. For me, one thing is I want to feel like who I am as a person is being able to be shown to the world and community around me. So the rewarding part for me is my work an extension of who I am? And that's why I chose this line of work, because at the end of the day, who I am is someone who wants to contribute and make changes in the world around me. So the most rewarding part is the fact that I get to express myself and be creative and be innovative and trying to find solutions. But also it's really about the human connection. I love people. So that curiosity of like, what is your experience? What are you going through? You take a woman farmer in rural Rwanda. What is her life experience? And how does that connect to my life experience living in this beautiful country in this nice suburb of Virginia? In what ways are we connected as human beings? And that's the piece that I get excited about the most, is not how are we different, but how are we the same? And how can we work together to make things better?
Fantastic. Kate or Laura, do you want to jump in?
I'm sure I agree. I think it's rewarding when you, like I said, personal values are with your values So you're giving back, and your company is expanding the ability for you to give back. And really it does through people. I'm an introvert. I don't know if a lot of you accounting people probably are introverts. So the networking part doesn't come naturally to me, but now over the years, I do realize like how important it is to have real connections. So I really enjoy connecting with my colleagues at work and helping them. And then we're helping our whole and our members. So as I said, we have health professionals helping save lives everywhere, working on the front lines through the pandemic. And that's really rewarding. I feel like even in an indirect way in my finance role.
Fantastic, Kate.
Well, it's interesting because both, I think, Laura and Tree were kind of talking about connecting with people and doing something that's making, oh, don't mind my weird camera, but they're doing something that's an extension of themselves in some way, which I love that. And I would agree. Any job I've had, when I was just trying to think back of what were the most rewarding, I think they all have a few things in common. And it could be something as, I mean, I've worked on the weirdest projects, like the mad cow, when mad cow disease came out. And I helped on a communications plan with farmers to help educate them because they were required to tag their cows and they weren't happy about it. Strange. However, it was a rewarding project. And then I look back with the hospice days and I look forward on programs I've helped stand up to now owning my own business. And I think when I was doing something that I felt would make some type of impact, even if albeit little, I felt like it was meaningful work. So for me, when it's something that's meaningful that I know is going to help someone down the road, whether it's direct or like Laura said, indirect, it just always felt really good. And now I think what's really lovely is that comes with, I think, time and experience and putting yourself out there is now I'm at this point where I'm seen as a doer and I'm known more. And so when the more known you are after you've kind of proven yourself, you have more room to try new things and people trust you to try different things. And so whether I'm doing my consulting job or I'm trying something at Rowan Tree, people believe me and they sign up for my program or they take my advice or my guidance. And just feeling like all this experience has built to something that now I actually know something that I can not only share, but people use. It just feels really good that it's being used and my knowledge isn't, it's something that matters. It's something, it's so unexpected and it feels really nice after all this time.
Love it. That is a great response. All right, students, I would love to see some questions. And I know some of you are from my class and I see some familiar names from Impact Fellows. So take a moment to, this is your opportunity, like to ask some very successful experts in the field questions that you have that you're just, you want to know something. Laura, you mentioned the pandemic a little bit. And so I want to come back to this question about the last, I think, several years have been really tough on businesses who are in the business for good space. And so many of us have heard about the Business Roundtable, signers, the businesses who came together and said, we care about people, planet, and profit. And then the pandemic hit. And it was sort of like, that was a nice statement. We really do care about people, planet, and profit. But we need to focus on profit, right? Like that, we're in survival mode. And so I'm wondering if you can talk either about that in general, how pandemic has affected small, medium, large size companies and what they've done, or use your own personal experience and give an example about how you and or your company have managed and how you've tried to align your triple bottom line values and sort of move forward in this time.
Sure. I think the pandemic has expanded probably organizations, and it's been very hard to be your A game because there's a lot of personal stress. There's been a lot of personal stress, and then that impacts the whole corporation. But on the plus side, we have a foundation as well as a trade association. So our board supported providing grants to our members who lost their jobs. Some health professionals lost their jobs because there's no routine healthcare in 2020, that type of thing. And some of our members got COVID. So we provided grants to members. We felt really good about that. In 2021, we changed our membership management system, and we felt really not good about that. It went terribly. So I think that type of work would have actually been better to wait until we were at least in a hybrid situation, but there's no way to know. And at a certain point, you feel like you have to keep going. So we were fortunate in that our members pretty much stayed with it. That's our main form of revenue. But I do think the fact that we were helping them help them pay members. Some of the benefit was a free membership to them. But we're still struggling with big projects. And I think it's just be the way it is for a while. So those are my main takeaways, but that we all need patience. Everybody's got a little bit of low frustration tolerance, and have to just adapt and be more willing to help. How can I help you? Help me, that type.
What do you wish that your company had done differently?
Well, I do wish we had kind of held off on that large project.
Okay.
Just think behind, we didn't have enough communication.
Mm-hmm.
And in person does make a difference with some of those things. And then when you have problems to solve, it takes more time remotely. So that, I would say, top thing.
So true. Kate, Sri.
Okay. So I'm going to speak from the social enterprise perspective because that's kind of the world I live in and where I was advising during the time of COVID. Social enterprises, and these are businesses that have a social return as well as their financial return. So these are not nonprofits, but hybrid businesses that would have a nonprofit but a for-profit arm. We work very lean. So a lot of the organizations that I work with were almost prepared for something like this because you have lean human resources, you have lean financial resources. So we're almost trained to kind of pivot in times of crisis. So that from that perspective, I haven't seen any of the social businesses that I've worked with truly suffer, but actually utilize it as another inflection point for creating solutions or pivoting their business model a little bit. Me personally, at the time I was a consultant and I was traveling all over the world. The moment COVID hit, my consultancy shut down. So I also had to figure out how to move away from that. Went back to my MBA. I wrote a script. I started consulting locally because I've worked in crisis environments and now we're in a global crisis. So I took my skill sets that I had and applied it into a different scenario. And I think that's something that an entrepreneurial mindset would do. So that's the perspective I'm speaking from, our social entrepreneurs. As an entrepreneur, you find ways to kind of build off of what's happening in that moment or create better solutions to grow. And so in that perspective, I don't think it hit us as hard. But the beauty in one way that came out of this is even though before COVID, people were talking about it, we're now in action mode. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier, where different stakeholders are having to come together to create the solution. So we're going from things were on a standstill, what do we do, to saying, well, people want to get back into action and we've got to look at the broader perspective of who everybody is in this grand scheme of what we're doing.
I think that's really great. Y'all have these such different and wonderful reflections. Kate, what would you add to that?
It's interesting because I have a little blend of both because in some ways I actually think COVID forced us all to grow in some of the best ways I think possible. And there are a lot of concepts we've been thinking about for a long time and just never did it because life is so fast. Like there's so many events and you have all these things and you do the way you're doing them and they've been working and you're too busy to change it up. And when COVID happened, it did force everyone to stop and you had to find a different way to work. And I have kind of two worlds to look at, like with my government and my government consulting world. My current company that I do work for part-time, they didn't hire remote workers. They didn't, because like, no, it's important to be together. Well, sure enough, they went totally remote. They actually got out of their lease early and they don't have a headquarters anymore. And now they're hiring all across the country and we're getting fantastic people. We're working in a totally different way and we're thriving. It kind of opened up space and room to try new things and new ways of working. And they hired a new leader who came in and is building a whole another type of business. And it's just been really interesting to see the people embrace new tools and like Teams meetings. And I mean, I've always been a huge fan of flexible work. I want to work smart. And I do work hard too, but I want to work smart. But now it seems like people are kind of getting more on board with that. So that's been really exciting. And then with Row Entry, I mean, we're a co-working space. Nobody wanted to co-work during COVID. So we were kind of screwed because we had just been running. We'd been open for about a year. We were finally plugging along. And then the global pandemic hit. So one of the really amazing things about leading your own organization is we had to make some tough decisions that were rooted in our values. And what would we do? And, you know, luckily we have a landlord who's lovely and cut our rent down. We cut down our costs and ran even more lean than we had been, but we lowered our membership rates. And almost 90% of our members stayed with us, even though they couldn't even come into our space. But what we did was we pivoted and we turned everything online. It's something I had wanted to do anyway, but again, we'd been too busy to try it. I wanted to create a course, I call it a co-growth cohort, where it's small groups of people working on, we have a facilitator and some content, and they work on something together as a cohort in a short period of time. At the end, they're done with it. I'd always wanted to stand that up. Well, COVID allowed us to do that. So now we're still running them and we're on our fourth one. And now we now are open again. So I think it forced us to be creative. And that phrase, grow where you are planted, is one of my favorites. And I think this was the example where we all had to grow where we were planted or we would just die on the vine.
Mm-hmm. I like what all of your answers really talked about. Using creativity or having flexibility or finding ways to pivot or understanding more. And I think that goes to the early question about, you know, what kinds of classes or experiences people should have. And it's seek out those courses that challenge you to be creative and to use that entrepreneurial mindset so that you can see, maybe make connections where they're not obvious, right? Like that you can start to see things in new ways and new patterns. So as our students, I mean, the world that we're living in right now is, it's kind of messy, right? I mean, we've just come off a race pandemic. We've come off, we've got the war in Ukraine. We've got the pandemic happening. And as our students are going to school sort of online, not online, airlines are opening up, masks are going to be like lifted on some of the airlines. What advice do you have for them as they go out and they seek jobs in this space, and that what would you tell them? It's just so uncertain.
I think, well, one thing I think Shree said that someone said about some people taking initiative. And it's that proactive reach out and offer. So I never realized how few people actually do take initiative, and until you see that people don't. And then so when somebody does, it's so refreshing and exciting. And so I'd say, again, ask questions. Reach out to people using the tools you have. Ask your parents and your professors. to connect you with people who you're interested in learning, and approach it from that way. Approach it from not I'm going to get a job, not I'm going to get the perfect job, they're going to do this for me. It's more about let me learn and connect with these people and dig in and put myself out there in that way and show that initiative. And if you have some extra time and they mention a problem that they have, I don't know, offer to help them do something. Like, offer help. Maybe it won't be paid, but like, I have a really big network. And when I have people come in and they're like, oh, I have a solution for you. Let me set that up for you. Well, who do you think I'm going to connect you to? Like, who do you think, if I know someone who has a job opening, who am I going to think of? So it's putting yourself out there and showing initiative, I think, goes well beyond a nice resume.
Nice. Sri or Laura?
Yes, definitely taking initiative. I think also being patient with yourself in terms of understanding your skill sets. You know, we built this space for your generation, honestly, meaning when I was in this space, there was not a lot of opportunity. We were creating it. Like I said, when I was doing a Google search, I got one hit. So here we are, you do a Google search, got thousands of hits. My colleagues and I have built recruiting companies just for social enterprise, just for impact businesses. I would say go to job boards that are focused just on social impact business, see what the companies are that are offering that, and then contact someone there to say, hey, I'd love to do marketing. I noticed you don't have a great social media website. Can I offer something here? Figure out what your skill set is. Research the company. If it excites you, feel what's in your being that excites you. And again, this is about solutions. So maybe there's something they didn't figure out that you're able to see from what you're looking just online. And don't be afraid to reach out to them, because people are looking for help. You know, we do work in very lean resources, sometimes human resources, and especially after COVID, people have been laid off. So this is a great opportunity for internships. So I would say start there, and to focus your search on these companies or these organizations.
Fantastic. Laura?
Yeah, I agree with Kate and Shri. Initiative is really important, but also take care of yourselves and to yourselves. You're going to look at companies, again, that align your value, and then do your homework. So research the company. If you have suggestions for them, as Kate says, share them. Share one of them. That would really probably be speaking in a very good way to them, and would make you stand out from others. So, and also just sometimes the obstacles are opportunities. So keep that in mind. Also, I wish I'd gotten out of my comfort zone more when I was in college and cultivated more relationships with my professors. And that could really help you when you're out looking for jobs.
All right, so I'm going to build on that, because I think that's, and if you want to add something more to that, Laura, about what you wish. So a slightly different version of the same question is, if your self now could talk to your younger self, what do you wish that you had done or that you knew then, that you know now? And so, Laura, getting out of your comfort zone is definitely one of those things. I think that's really important. I share your introversion. I know it doesn't come across to most anybody. They don't believe me. I've taken every test in the world. I am an introvert, and it's hard for me to make those connections. So I love that advice of getting out of your comfort zone. So what else would you say, Laura?
Well, I think part of that would be cultivating those relationships. Maybe one professor who you actually, go to their office hours, or either virtually or in person, and learn more about them, or maybe notice one other student who you'd like to work on a project, and you would check in with them. I think that type of thing. I wish I did not do that when I was in college. I had.
I know. Well, I'm going to turn it over to the rest of the panelists. I think we're coming down on close to time here, so I'm going to let you both close out with that question. But before we get there, I just want to say we professors love students. Like, I have a job working with students because I enjoy working with students. So that advice to come talk to your professor is so important. And it's not just because it's an ego trip, for me to say, oh, somebody came and talked to me today. That's not why I'm suggesting it. It's because when you come talk to me, then I get to know more about you. And then when 2 years later you say to me, hey, I'm going to apply to X program or this job, can you write a letter for me? Then I can say, oh yeah, because I've known you throughout your career, and you came and you talked to me and you took that initiative to say, oh, by the way, this is what I'm doing, how are you, and you're checking in. It benefits you to do this. This is a real strategic opportunity for you to connect. Or you might say, this isn't working for me in class right now, and you've just saved a whole nother generation of students from coming through that same class with that same awful assignment because you had the courage to say, this doesn't work. And here's why, right? So this is beneficial to you and future generations. Kate, your older self is talking to your younger self. What do you wish you knew?
Okay, well, one, don't not go on study abroad because your boyfriend at the time tells you he doesn't want to be away from you for 6 months. Because guess what? We're not together, and I never went to Spain. So, but I'm serious, like, don't let someone hold you back, because think of yourself in 10 years and what you'll regret. Will you regret not trying something, or will you regret trying it? Like, most likely you're going to regret the fact that you didn't try something, because time goes really quick, and maybe it's a hard experience, but it's going to be temporary. But the fact is, like, going back to both what Laura and Therese said, is put yourself out there and try something new, even if it's scary. Don't let people hold you back. And then the other thing is, again, people said it before, it's okay to not know what you want to do right now. I'm learning. I finally learned that the first, I mean, you're still learning your whole life, but I feel like the first third to half of your career is you weeding out what you don't like and pulling in what you do like, because you don't even know what's out there. And that's okay to spend the first 10 years just pulling in that experience to build your own life in the future. And that's just fine.
That's awesome advice too. Yeah, y'all are good at this. Suri, what would you say?
I think Kate and I are probably kindred spirits. I did not listen to a boyfriend because I don't think I had a boyfriend in college, but I did not go and study abroad. And I really wish I did that, because we just live in such a global environment now. To have that exposure at a young age and develop yourself in a way to look at the world through other people's perspective versus our like micro community would have made a huge difference early on in terms of my personal development. So I would say try to do some kind of study abroad if you haven't, or if you're not thinking about it. The other thing, very similar to what Kate said, and maybe from a different direction, I wish I figured out my superpower earlier. And what I mean by that is we all have a superpower. And what that is what's your skill set? What is that thing that excites you? What is that thing that you're like, wow, this is like something unique to who I am in a certain way, whether it's writing or whether it's being a great chef. So I wish I kind of spent more time not listening to other people and focused more on developing, okay, I like all these different things. Which one is the thing I really enjoy? What's my superpower that excites me? And so I would encourage you to try different experiences to figure that out earlier on.
And on that note, I'm just gonna, before I turn it over to our Dean Willigan here, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming today. You all are amazing. I'm so glad that I've had a chance to meet you and work with you and to take a page. I look forward to, I'm glad that my network expanded and it includes you, and I look forward to working with you in the future. But thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with us and share your advice. Pleasure. Carrie.
And let me thank you as well. This was a wonderful panel. I learned so much as well. So I want to thank you on behalf of the students and the faculty and staff at the School of Business at George Mason. Thank you so much. And students, thank you so much. And we will see you all soon. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.